pleased to have George with us again. Always incredibly intelligent and insightful. Hey George, how you doing?
Good. Hi, everyone.
Hey. Okay, so quick intros and then just get onto it. I'm a Muslim. I try to get people, even if they're not Muslim, to experience some of the wisdom of Islam. I also believe that the origins of all religions are true. So I believe in sort of trying to build bridges and things. I've got my friend George here, who's a very open minded Christian from Lebanon. Um, and has lots of interesting beliefs that don't go with orthodoxy, like he believes Prophet Muhammad is a prophet, and all sorts of interesting things like that. But let's just get on with it. He's asking some fantastic questions. I've tried to make a whole bunch of little graphics to help us along. We're going to be covering three questions. One is fundamental ideas like, so George asked this himself, and it'd be interesting to find out why he asked this. So he wants to know what are the five pillars of Islam. I think he could have Googled that. So I think we're going to talk about the details of why they are the five pillars. I think that's more like we have some WhatsApp discussions, but I don't ask him too many things so that we can leave it for the chat. And then there's the second topic is how to stop worrying. So I like to the way I'm leading the live stream is we're going to start off with fundamentals of what is Islam, like basically the five pillars, then a personal issue, and then a global issue, which um is the something that's affecting us all, is the West's inflation avoidable? And basically how Islam can solve it, because I'm not just talking about random stuff. So here we go. So fundamentals, why five pillars of Islam? Why are there five pillars of Islam? What are they all about? But let's, before we get into it, I didn't ask you, George, because I purposely didn't ask you, because I wanted to ask you now. What was your interest in asking about the five pillars of Islam?
Because I want to understand more about how it came about, why it's five. In a way, it's almost like Islamic's version of the Ten Commandments, in a way, but reduced down to five. It's a new thing. I think also from an ethics point of view, I can't remember if it was Plato or Aristotle, but they also talked about certain pillars. So I'm wondering if that played an influence in Muhammad. And also, does this come from? This is now the issue with me, and from what I've been learning from Islam is a lot of what the Quran says. I seem to agree with. I don't have an issue with mostly on the surface level. But then it's the what do you call it, Hadith.
Hadith.
Where,
I knew you were going to say this, but anyway,
yeah.
go on.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really
I
want
know
to
you
start
that well.
learning, like with everything now in Islam, and this is only because I've started to learn more. I need to question, well, where is this coming from? Is it from the Hadith or is it from the Quran? Because I personally do not. I feel like while I believe in Prophet Muhammad was a prophet, I believe in what the Quran says. And then even if you think about it, if it's God's word, then you wouldn't need a like upgraded thing that explains other extra stuff. Like it should be covered in God. You should be able to use your own consciousness, your own mind. And what seems to have happened in Islam is the same thing that happened in Christianity, which is we had this like prophet that gave us all this good wisdom, but then other men have changed it and corrupted it for their own ends on what they think is right, which is not necessarily truth.
All right. So great. So first of all, I'm really glad you're asking about these fundamentals in your journey to learning about Islam. I love that. And I think it's going to be really useful for so many other people as to understanding sort of the philosophy behind the basic ideas of Islam. And I do recommend, like you're doing, trying to stick to the Quran rather than going to the Hadith, because some Hadiths are incorrect, some are not, and just going to the so-called Sahih or the good ones, even that within them there are all sorts of contradictions. So it's a safer thing. I'm not against Hadith, but some Hadiths are wrong. They're compiled 150 years afterwards, right? So a lot of them. So there's a lot of potential problems. It's better to stay, if you can, or if you're a new learner, maybe it's wise to go to the Quran. Um, And the other thing I would say in support of the hadith, they're just basically a commentary on the Quran. So if there's anything that is like basically the Quran in practice, but if there's anything in the hadith that's against the Quran, straight away the hadith is out, finished. It's wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think you've got some good principles going in as you're going into Islam and learning about Islam is fantastic. So let's get on with the first bit. So oh yeah, so I should answer your question, like where are the 5 pillars from? So there are, you can say from the Quran, but dotted all over the Quran.
Okay.
So the Quran talks about zakat, but it doesn't put it all in one place.
Then
And then the
you
hadith.
decided to put it as make it as 5. Then how did that come about?
I think this is the Prophet Muhammad's understanding of the Quran, and maybe I should have researched this more, right? But I know it's basically dotted all over the Quran, and then Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said these are 5 basic principles, right? And I mean, I wonder if we should worry about it too much, but we can see there are some basic principles of Islam anyway when you practice them, right? So, and then I think what I'll focus on, because I don't like to get too ideological, I like to get practical. So, like, how do these things really help you fundamentally as a human being? How does it help society? That's what I really focus on. And some people get too ideological, and I think it's good to have a good balance. It's like, oh, where does this word come from? And does it really the 5 pillars? Could it be a 6th idea that could have been added on? Actually, these are very 5 basic rules, but there are so many millions of other rules that Islam requires of you, right? And the more you follow, the better.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's just go on with it. So what are the 5 pillars of Islam? One is the declaration of faith. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a second. The other is prayer, and specifically called a salat. It's like a formulation. You do it at certain times, 5 times a day in a certain format. Then there's charity, there's fasting, and pilgrimage. And even the charity is a special kind of charity. Generally, should be giving all sorts of charity, but it's called zakat, right? And then it's a special kind of, it's a special formulation which we'll go into, has all sorts of benefits. Fasting in the month of Ramadan especially, although you can fast any time of the year. And then pilgrimage, especially to the Kaaba in Mecca, where all the Muslims point or pray towards, but they can, we can talk about, like, I mean, you don't have to necessarily pray to it if you're traveling, for example, but you
But I'd
should.
say every single one of those pillars Christianity follows. Like if you're a by the book Christian or Catholic, in my opinion, you would do every single one of those.
Wow, fantastic. So yeah, you declare one God. So let's go into it, I suppose. It's very, I mean, give me what do you mean by that before we go into that? Because it's very interesting. I'm learning.
In church, in the halfway through the church, you always declare your beliefs. That is, there's one God in heaven, and so we always make this declaration halfway through. Prayer is, we pray with, the Our Father, Hail Mary prayers that we've got. Charity, well, we give in church, we give money while we're in church, and the church is technically a charity, right? It's listed as a charity.
Yeah.
So just by giving money in, then you're already giving to charity. Then we've got Lent, which is 40 days where you're meant to fast, and people do it in different ways. Some people give up meat, some people give up their favorite food, some people, like my mom, will only eat after 12 p.m. People do it in different ways, but at the end of the day, fasting is fasting. And then pilgrimage, like me especially, we have many holy Christian sites that are like really old churches that was a saint's church, or we build these massive statues. I know some Muslims might see that as idol worship, visiting these statues, but I'll tell you, I was even surprised by this. When I go there are many women in hijabi, outfit, you can only see their eyes, full burqa, and they're visiting these statues, these holy places. So, even some Muslims, like, because people like Mary and Jesus are highly respected in the religion.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to start pointing about idol worship and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not sure. It depends on the situation. I'm not really going to particularly say those things. But I mean, is Jerusalem a particular place of pilgrimage?
It is, but I mean, I think pilgrimages
Or
visit
Christians?
any holy site, any holy site.
Yeah,
There's many of
yeah,
there's because of my Catholic upbringing. We've got so many saints, and
yeah.
usually the area there's something special about the area. You know, like I've been to Lourdes in France. You know the story of Lourdes in France, where some girls saw the apparition of Mary, and
All right.
people
Okay.
getting healed by the water.
Okay. Yeah. So, and there's lots of similarity. I think the Muslims even used to pray towards Jerusalem before the Quran said pray towards the Mecca, and Jews themselves, like so, Muslims when they get buried, they have their heads towards the Kaaba, Mecca, and the Jews used to be buried in a way so they had their head towards Jerusalem. So there's many, like you say, very similar things between the religions. They all come from God, so it wouldn't be surprising. They've got a lot of the same formulas. So let's jump into which one am I on? So 5 pillars. Is that the next one I've got there? Oh, I just unclicked it. All right. There we go. The declaration, right? So know God, and so because I'm not going to say you're an Arab, I'm going to try not to say that, but you know Arabic, right? Okay.
Lebanese.
Yeah, you're Lebanese. That's right. And the reason why I was pointing that out is so let me just read out the basic declaration is there's no God except Allah and Muhammad is his messenger, right? And the word for God, ilah, is that right? That's right, ilah.
Allah.
Oh no. So Allah is the God, right? But any God would be ilah, right?
I'm not sure about that.
Oh, okay. Basically, the meaning I understand the meaning, but sometimes I pronounce the word slightly wrong.
Illa also means like except for.
Oh yeah, but la ilaha illallah. So
That means
there's no
no God
God.
but God. Yeah. La,
That's right. But the God, as it were, right?
yeah.
Okay. So, but also the word God, the general word for God means one that should be loved or things. So basically, it could be love for anything. Like you could make a God of your wife, a God of your car or something. Okay. So
Yeah.
the idea is that there's nothing truly that should be loved except God, right? And everything that you love, like you love your wife, right? But you love your wife for the sake of God first. Like there's a hierarchy.
Not just that, I think like I say I love my wife, but there's a limit. There's a point at which my love will she does certain things really bad. Same with my kids, same with everyone. There's a point where you would like renounce them and not love them anymore, right? Well with
Right.
God,
Okay.
it doesn't matter what happens, you always gotta love him with all your heart, no matter what misfortune befalls you. You know, whatever you can blame God, even though it's something to do with God. We've discussed this
Yeah.
before, how God
Yeah.
works. The only thing God ever does with us is He communicates. Like with how we met. You know, the day we met, I was just marching off into the park looking for someone to have good discourse with.
Yeah.
The first person I bumped into, and
Yeah.
I remember even that day you said every single person I've been trying to speak to has been cussing me for hours
Yeah.
out. I haven't been able to get a good video footage. Maybe I have to
Yeah.
wait until God wanted me to wait until you arrive so we could have a good discourse. And I thought, yeah, that's beautiful how you say it, because I was looking for someone, you know, to fill these little gaps for me, and you know, we worked out perfectly.
Beautiful. And that moment's recorded, eh? Anybody can check it out. Our meeting. Okay, yeah. So how do I put it? What this declaration, it's not just an empty declaration, it's help you focus on what's most important. Everything else is under that hierarchy. So like if you put a person as the most important thing in your life is going to be ruined because you can never depend on that person. But God, in Islam is the most gracious, the merciful. He gives you so much stuff. He wants you to be successful. He's doing everything to make you successful. And first of all, he's giving you so much stuff. Shouldn't you love him more than there's nobody's giving you as much as God, right?
Yeah.
Nowhere in comparison. So it's a really good focus. And then to know about God, if you want the most untainted understanding of God, that's through Prophet Muhammad. That's the Islamic idea. So that's just the basics. And even maybe before that, if you want to say, is like, how do you know somebody's a Muslim? Like that must be the definition, right? The basic definition. That you could add a million rules, but you'd never complete those rules. You said, oh, you must be fasting, you must be this. But also, like, you have to start with a belief, right? You might not follow through, but you got to start with a belief. So that's got to be number one. That's the most basic thing. And then sort of baked into this declaration is something really important that we really struggle with at the moment, is rules for life. Where do you get them from? Where do they come from? Do you know what I mean? So at the moment, you got Jordan Peterson, he's got his rules for life. You got people nowadays have no rules for life. They're so confused. They don't know what a man or a woman is, all this kind of stuff. And so if you have these fundamentals, you're going to be doing much better than most people. What do you think about that?
I agree. But on this declaration thing, what I would say, and I see this a lot with Muslims, and I'm just talking from an outsider's view, is you keep putting Muhammad on a pedestal. You keep, like, he's just a prophet. He's no higher than Jesus or Moses. But Muslims always add, like here, where you add, and Muhammad is his messenger. I think that's unnecessary.
But do you see that what we're saying is, from a Muslim perspective, all the other religions are tainted by corruption, people changing the text and things. You might not agree.
So is Islam, though.
But no, so what we're saying, this is a point of belief for now, before we prove it one way or the other, that the Quran has not been changed. Okay.
That might
So
be the case.
based on, and the Quran is basically the message that God sent through Prophet Muhammad. So it's not really putting Prophet Muhammad on a pedestal. Even himself, he didn't put himself on a pedestal. Do you know he had a signet ring, right? Okay, he didn't want to make a signet ring, but he made a signet ring to send to the kings. And instead of saying the normal order of Muhammad or Rasul, when you're a king or whatever your position is, you have it on your signet ring. And instead of saying Muhammad, there's the messenger of God, he put it in reverse, putting Allah on top to signify, and then his name. And then he said, no, it says Allah, then messenger, and then Muhammad. He put it in reverse order, giving reverence to the name of God. He didn't want to put his name. He himself, his name was lower than the position of the thing called a prophet. So do you get it? Like, he had these levels, and he wasn't giving himself any sort of reference. It's just the basic idea is, where do you know about God? How do you learn about God? Through Prophet Muhammad, through this message. Yeah,
I think you're saying, but I'm sure Muhammad was very humble, and even he probably, if you looked at how people were worshiping it today, always saying, Muhammad, peace be upon him, or whatever.
Yeah.
All these things that is only reserved for Muhammad, they're giving him like a special privilege. I think he wouldn't like that. I don't think he would like to see people of the Islamic faith respecting him more than they respect Jesus. If anything, he probably respects Jesus more than he did himself.
So as far as I understand, God said to give him that specific, a little bit of extra reverence, like all prophets, like, according to Muslims, if we say Jesus, you say Jesus, peace be upon him, and any other non-prophets, we've got all these other things we say out of kindness and reverence and respect. So those are details, and also it's like important to know that he said things like, so one time he said, without going into boring people into too many details, one time he said about dusting some agricultural advice, and then it was wrong.
Yeah.
Do you know about the dusting the date palms with the?
Before, yeah.
Yeah, and he made a mistake, and he said, "You know what? I'm a prophet of God. So if I say something that's not about the teachings of God, then you don't have to do those things.
Where's
God could
that
make a
present? Is
mistake."
that present in the Hadith?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's one of these, right? So things like that, right? So he tried to, and he said so many other things to not give him any more importance than just his role, and it's not self-importance; it's just importance to the role, because that's if you know, is what's more important, a messenger of God or king? A messenger of God, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That he just gave reverence to that role, not himself, really. You know, he used to say when people were nervous in front of him, "I'm just a simple man who eats basic simple food from a," I can't remember the exactly word, but he used to belittle himself, you know, as in like, "I'm just a simple person, don't be nervous in front of me," sort of thing. He said something like somebody who ate dried meat or something like that. But anyway, so that's just the basic introduction. That's number one. Number two, and I'm always trying to whiz through things. Is it charity? No, I missed one. 5 pillars. Prayer. Here we go. So prayer, remember God using wise communal form 5 times a day, peace inside and out. That's my sort of summary of the salat, it's called. Okay, it's a special formulation. And I'm just gonna kind of break that down, what I've just said there, right? So first of all, remembering God is absolutely fundamental. You need that constant reminder and perspective about what life is about, because it goes by and most people waste it. So you got to have that. Remember God, remember God. What's the whole point? Why am I here? Why am I here? Right? That's a really basic thing. And then there's a formulation, like there's certain words, that wise words from God. So instead of you blabbering on and saying stupid stuff, these are words that you repeat, and each time you develop as a human being, you understand more about them. Or it just could be that each day it helps you value what's happening in your life. So one of the great things is you start by saying Allahu Akbar, God is the greatest.
Yeah.
That's so incredibly important, even though it's so simple, because one of our biggest enemies is our ego, right? And you just keep saying God is the greatest, you get reminded of that. Otherwise, you do so many dumb things. There's a great book by Ryan Holiday, Ego is the Enemy, right? He followed his ego and ruined his life, and then he kind of came back and started learning lessons, and that was one of his lessons, and I think it's a really good one. And then it's not just a normal prayer, it's a communal prayer. You get together 5 times a day, shoulder to shoulder. There's no big person, no small person. You together, you do something spiritual. So when you do something together, it's kind of like an agreement that this is important. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you enjoy the spirituality of coming to a mosque, or if it's a church or whatever it is. And then, so what's the summary of that? What's the summary result of that? You get inside peace and outside peace. You have to have some inner peace before you can export it to the world, right? And so you have the inside peace where you value community, and you're peaceful with your brothers and sisters. Nowadays, people, I had a friend, I invited him to an event where we was having these kind of casual sports day for men over 40, blah, 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 right? And he said on the way to meeting me, he had 2 fights. And he's a nice enough guy, right? Somebody from Speaker's Corner, right? People just can't handle each other anymore. So you need to have some inner peace, and you need to practice outer peace. The prayer is a fantastic way of practicing outer peace. What are your thoughts?
I agree, but I would say for some people, first of all, this whole specific thing being it has to be 5 times a day, I disagree with. I think you can pray 1 second a day, and that could be enough. It all depends on the individual. So I'll give you an example. If I'm crossing the road and I see an old woman, I happen to cross the road, and I say something, like, "This is for you, God," whatever. That can be a form of prayer, in my opinion, because you're remembering God, you're talking to God. Or if I'm just like self-reflecting at night, being like, "God, what is the situation I'm in? How can I improve? How can I improve my family life?" All these things are just talking to God internally and trying to find that that connection to God. So that might be more valuable than just going and repetitively saying certain phrases and prayers that your priest or your imam or rabbi is telling you to say.
I would agree. If you do it randomly or repetitively without thinking, it's got no value, right?
Yeah, and I think most people do that now. Most people just mumble out the words and think they've done what they need to do.
Okay, I mean, who knows?
They beat their wife or something right afterwards. So
Right.
they're really praying.
Yeah, I mean, I hope not, but yes, most people, there's sort of a bell curve. If people know something about statistics, most people don't know what they're doing, but they benefit a little bit, right? And also, in a world where I think one of the weaknesses with about Christianity, and I don't think you would doubt this, right, is sort of the watered down or do anything you want sort of thing. It's really good to have this sort of
branches of Christianity, like the
yeah, let's say Western Christianity, right? It's just do anything you want, and they end up doing anything they want. And it's like, when you have a self-help book and you want the self-help book to tell you what to do, right? I do. Most people, they don't want an empty book saying do anything you want and whatever, right? Because people like, you want to be good at like public speaking. You want to know exactly, one of the things I do is break down things into 3 parts and all this kind of stuff, whatever, right? There's so many bits of wisdom, and you want to know exactly what to do. And then the third kind of thing I want to say about it is that, like, these are not just ordinary rules. These are rules made by the creator. So if you can get to the place where you realize these are rules made by the creator, and we have like lots of evidence that there is, and even in the prayers, like if you're an entrepreneur, loads of entrepreneurs they know about getting up early in the morning and starting really early, and the 5 daily prayers, the first one is before sunrise, and there's loads of books about like getting up really early in the morning before everybody, your brain's tuned in, you're ready to go, all this kind of stuff. So there's so many benefits. Yeah, I could keep going on, but there are a lot of benefits to having this regimented, organized system of. I mean, I want to put this big one in for me. This is a really big one because I know I keep talking, but this is a big one, right? If you didn't have these 5 times, or even at least one time, when people got together every day, people wouldn't get together at all. You need a system to get people together. It's really, and it's so lovely. I'm sorry I keep doing this, but like there was a convert who and maybe this will help, right? There was a convert, and I got a video of him, and he struggled with. He's an English guy, and he struggled with the idea of having 5 daily prayers. And the first thing you've got to realize, it's not for God, it's for you. That's what he realized. And the second thing he realized, because he's a stock exchange stockbroker, whatever, it's really intense life, right? He's like, he thought about it, and he said, you know what, I wish my boss would tell me that we're gonna have a break now in the middle of the day, second part of the day, whatever, forced break. I'm gonna stop talking, but there's too many good things about it.
I agree. There's no harm can come from it. It only benefits.
Yeah, and it's a choice. Isn't religion a choice? So you choose to go on this system, and it helps you. And like you say, it's a benefit, right? So it's a benefit. Yeah, cool. Whoops, did I press the wrong button for you? Okay, so next one is charity. And there is an order, so you can see there's like fundamental belief, and then there's the prayer, there's oneness connection with people. And now we're on charity, and I'm going to break this down. So it might look a bit of like a contradiction, wealth tax, because you can implement this as a law, and it can fix inflation, which is what we're going to talk about in more detail in the next part of the show. Wow. It's 34 parts. I'm rubbish at keeping to time, man. But anyway, I'll try to. I don't know. Let's just try. I just looked at the time right now, and stops you from materialism addiction. So I'll whiz through that really quickly. So first of all, if you implement it, I purposely wrote wealth tax, not just normal tax. It's the smartest tax I know, right? You only taxes people who've got extra income that's not used throughout the whole year. So basically taxes the riches only. It's like you have all these other mechanisms they call progressive tax, whatever, where they have a fixed percent for everybody and all this kind of, or no, different amounts of percentage. This is so smart, it's mind-blowing. Okay, and I'm going to talk about that. And then it fixes inflation. I will talk about it very briefly. So basically, if you search something called the Wurgel miracle of Wurgel, it's some people who weren't even Muslims basically implemented this sort of special kind of charity called the Zakat. I didn't even mention the name yet. And basically, it moved unused money around the economic system or around the town really quickly. And they were in the middle of the Great Depression, you know, before the Second World War, was it? I can't remember now. And it boosted their economy so much, right? And I won't go into it because, again, I'm going to run out of time. And then probably the first thing I should have said, it fixes your materialism addiction, because when you give away a little bit of money, you realize, oh my God, my world hasn't collapsed. And you become free from that. Charity, like you said, really, it's in different religions, it frees you, and it actually makes you happier as well, because that's actually how we're psychologically made. There's loads of psychological studies. Again, I don't want to talk about it too much, but there's things like they've done experiments like if you buy coffee for yourself versus buying coffee for somebody else, you're far happier buying coffee for other people. So those are my very brief bang ideas about why that is incredibly important. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, just a few quick ones. I think I do charity, like for my family in Lebanon. Is, there's poverty and so on. I give what I can. But I believe the biggest and most important charity is time. Like, I think my YouTube videos, this is charity. I'm giving out education. I'm not getting paid to do this. In fact, making videos has caused me more nuisance, more trouble than any benefits. But it's my charity to the world because the truth is important. And we live in a time now where true messages are being silenced and attacked. And it's a dangerous time, especially for anyone who believes in God like us, because they will come for God next. They will come for God. God is on their agenda. That's one of the things they want to destroy.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said this about the different kind of charity, because zakat is just a fundamental lowest, the basic building block, like to get the rich to give especially, right? Because that's so it's a wealth tax. Okay. But I'm so glad you said that about like why you're here, because it's also why I'm here. I really don't need to do this. I really don't care about people's views, but I care about only to the extent that I hope more people get it. But actually, sometimes the more views there are, the more crazy the video is, or something. It's not actually, there's a sort of inverse relationship between the quality of the content. Not that I purposely make bad content, but sometimes people insulting me in the videos makes the video more popular, which is sad. But anyway, so I really don't need to do this, and I know you don't need to do this. And like you say, you suffer, and I suffer as well in many ways from doing this kind of stuff, right? So this is so important. This is charity, and there are many forms of charity. Just this particular fundamental form of charity, especially for the rich, is that's it. Yeah. So thank you very much for saying that. Do you want to add anything? I don't know.
No, that I agree with you. What you said.
Cool. This is why our videos just generally tend to go super fast, doesn't it? Because like just bang, say what's necessary. It's cool. Okay, so fasting, what's good about it? So this is the specific kind of fasting we're talking about is Ramadan fasting. Like I fast throughout the whole year anyway, but that's just kind of extra stuff, right? Personally, it's good for me, and Prophet Muhammad used to fast throughout the year. But this is like the basics we're talking about. Okay, so with Ramadan fasting, people don't know what Ramadan is. It's like a month, roughly 30 days, and everybody fasts together. So what's the point of it? First of all, it's spiritual. It's like it's like a focus. It's a rehab moment in time. Okay, and the fact that you do it together is really powerful, because human beings are pretty weak, but when we do things together, there's all these diet kind of things that you can go on. When people do it together, there's a lot of ladies, I think, especially do things like fast diet programs together. I used to have Jenny Craig when I was young and stuff like that. Okay, when you do things together, it makes it actually fun. So like, oh, it's like the end of the day, and we're all going to break fast together, and it's really cool. Imagine hundreds of people just fast breaking. You were going to come to one event which didn't quite work out. Yeah, but like, even though you're a Christian, but it's a pretty cool thing to do, you know, eat together, and you know, there's all sorts of cool stuff about it. So, and then you're like, fasting is really good for you as well. That's another side benefit. But the focusing on spirituality for a month, with the idea that you're supposed to carry that forward, it's like a springboard to make you better, and then you might drop a little bit, but like hopefully you're better than before. Like you're here before Ramadan, you go up, and then after Ramadan you're about there, but each Ramadan you're a bit higher than before. It helps. It's like a focus thing. I don't know if that helps, if it makes any sense.
Yeah, that does. I think we've discussed this before, but I'll stick to what I said. I believe in fasting gives loads of health benefits, and by silencing those cravings, you grow closer to God as well by being disciplined. Those who love God and are close to God, you will find they're usually more disciplined people. They're like they're not the nuisance to society. You know, those who regularly go to the mosque or church, they're usually good individuals, nice people. Um, but I don't believe in the water fasting. I think you've got to definitely stay hydrated to avoid any harm to yourself. And I also agree, you should fast all year round. I'm letting myself go now because I've been in the hospital for 2 months and it's hard to get motivated. I know I shouldn't use that as an excuse. Like, I should have stayed strong in my faith in God, knowing I was going to come out and still fasted and controlled my weight. That's a weakness, but I'm going to rectify that once I get out by doubling up on my gym and my fasting. We pay for our sins at the end of the day. It's just going to be even more effort now to lose the weight. But I will lose it, but I'll have to suffer, and that's how life is. So yeah, fasting is definitely a good thing, and
We all fail. We all got weaknesses, and we work on them. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
I mean, recognizing them is the first part of it as well.
But the longer you stay undisciplined, the longer you're gonna have to pay, and I think it's the same in life. You know, the more
Yeah.
evil and wicked you are, the more harder it is to get back to God. You got a longer mountain to climb.
That I love that thing about discipline. That's why actually I fast twice a week, because I know it's a funny thing that when people don't realize this, like they don't understand why like depression is going up and suicide is going up while life is getting easier. It's because we developed these first world problems. Like one of the reasons my life has become so easy is because I work from home, which didn't happen before COVID and all that kind of stuff, right? Which means I can go down to the fridge and eat anytime I want. Right, and all sorts of bad habits. So I use that discipline. You need it's the antidote. I'm pretty sounding like Jordan Peterson, but maybe it helps, right? It's the antidote to chaos, right? Chaos really messes up with your life, and anybody wants discipline is not a bad thing. Discipline just focuses your energy in a positive way, and that's what I'm doing. That's what fasting doing. Loads of people who don't know, like you kind of alluded to, fasting has become a well-recognized system for improving your health. Details on like dry fast, wet fast, and all these are the specialist details, but fasting generally, good stuff. So I will try to whiz on to the next thing. What's this? Pilgrimage. Yep, we're on the last one. So what am I going to say about this very quickly? So a global oneness time, I think, global oneness with God and humanity. There's two kind of focuses on that, right? It's like so the interesting thing about this pilgrimage is not just like when you go there, but everybody's constantly praying towards that. It doesn't mean that they think God is there, because in the Quran, God is everywhere. But it's just a helpful way of being at one with all of humanity. This is your one God, your one creator. But then the act of going to this place, this Mecca, with a let's say the first mosque according to the Quran or Muslims, right? Which actually connects many different regions, all the Abrahamic faiths, at least Christianity, Judaism, whatever. This place. It has massive effects. So, like, for example, you probably heard of Malcolm X, and do you know how it changed his life when he went on the pilgrimage? Do you know about the story?
Yeah, I've seen on the video how he had this weird interpretation of Islam where he thought, it was mainly for black people, and I think we did he even think Muhammad was black for a while, and then
Probably, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't go into. It's called the Nation of Islam, and it
when
was
he went to, when
basically,
he went to Mecca and he saw
yeah.
people, different races and religions, he changed his mind about race, and we
Yeah,
realized God was for everyone.
right. So, and it's powerful to see things in practice. Do you know what I mean? It's like you can have a theory, but when you see it and people just like chilling out, it's a white brother, black, white sister, whatever, all these different people. It's like, wow, like I know it works. Do you know what I mean? You have a theory and there's a practice, and when you see it in practice, it's really cool and it's really powerful. That experience of pilgrimage is really good in itself. And there's loads of other benefits. So besides being anti-racist, everybody's shoulder to shoulder when they're praying and all this kind of stuff. It's anti-elitist because you have to wear like just very basic clothes, like just two pieces of, if you're a man, two pieces of white material, so a rich person doesn't look richer than anybody else, sort of thing. And it's a sort of anti-materialistic thing again. You're reminding yourself like what really matters. You don't need stuff. You even shave your hair off and all this kind of stuff. Or I just chopped a little bit of my hair because I was a kid. I don't know, something like that. But anyway, that's the basic idea. So there's loads of benefits, oneness and anti-materialism, and united with humanity, and it works.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
And as a Christian from Lebanon, we have like dozens, and I mean dozens of pilgrimage sites, dozens of them. We put up statues everywhere, and then they become pilgrimage sites. And I'll tell you something, it is amazing because it gives you so much things to do, and it's a positive thing. Rather than just aimlessly going to a club and party, we have places where you can just drive up, free parking. It's usually in a rural area. You can take your time, visit a place of worship to really I think one of the thing about pilgrimages, it's the effort you put in as well. Like we have to drive like an hour to go, and then usually a lot of these places you need to walk uphill like 10-15 minutes. You have to put in effort, which I think goes to show, I like me and my wife, we went on loads of pilgrimage sites, and yes, it was beautiful because it was like being a tourist but also being one with God at a time. And there's nothing wrong with that because God loves us to be happy. So if what makes us happy is being a tourist and going on these pilgrimages, and I'm thinking about God, that God is happy about that. I think a lot of times people are too sticklers to the rules and they don't think, hold on, we're created in the image of God. If I enjoy doing this thing, if it's true enjoyment, then why would God be angry about it? He wouldn't. He wouldn't. So I think pilgrimage is amazing, and that's what we lack in the UK, for example. What are our pilgrimages? Going to Stonehenge. It's not really a religious side.
Well, they don't really have any sense of direction and things like that,
We need the UK to build like huge churches or mosques and like really amazing places that people will be like, wow, I want to go and check this place out as a pilgrimage. I want to go see this massive Jesus or massive cross or just any innovative art that also connects to God.
Interesting. So, what was I thinking about? So, yes, one thing when you said the effort required to go on this pilgrimage, that's one of the reasons why, basically, a very good reason why it's the fifth pillar, because like the easiest one is just declaring your faith. Everybody can do it, right? But then the hardest one is like you might not be able to afford it, for example, to go all the way to Saudi Arabia and stuff like that. Then another thought, like you said, you should make your own pilgrimage points or something. And I thought, like, you know what? God should make these pilgrimage points. And you said there's lots of them, and they're nice. They're nice. In Jordan we've got the 12 different springs of Moses and stuff like that, right? They're nice. It's good to remember these important people, you know, like Moses and things like that, and that's got its own value. But it's nice to have that one thing. The power of one is something beautiful, like the reminder that there's one God. It's hard to beat that. Do you know what I mean? Like everybody has to come to this point. You know, that's pretty awesome. You know, all races, all you might, if you have millions of pilgrimage points, you might go to the British one, and all the white people just go to that one. There's something nice about the international one. But I won't go on about it because I do think those other pilgrimage things are nice as well. It's better than going to a nightclub and whatever.
Yeah, and look, in Christianity, obviously Jerusalem is still the holy place, it's the holy city. So even though we have all these other pilgrimages, the ultimate pilgrimage is Jerusalem, and I think it always will be.
Yeah, and we as Muslims, I think we have these, you could call them mini pilgrimages, but they're not called exactly pilgrimages. Like we're told to make an effort to go for Eid. So just to give you an idea of actually the structure of Islam relating all the way to the pilgrimage, like 5 times a day you meet with your local community. Then twice a year you meet with the larger community in Eid, because we have 2 Eids. Eid, like, is all about getting together. That's a fundamental idea. Okay. And then once in a lifetime, you meet with the whole international community. That's the beautiful, poetic way of connecting with people. Do you want to say anything? I've got comments coming up. We'll whiz through them, all from Alika. Sorry for ignoring you, Alika. I was in the wrong tab. But do you want to say anything about that before we whiz through what Alika's got to say?
No, I'm happy with what we've discussed.
Cool. Okay, so let's whiz through this. Hi, Khalid. If your prophet Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was a true prophet, why did he smoke opium? He didn't. She likes trolling me, so I won't indulge it too much. But I do appreciate she's been trolling me right from the beginning when nobody's watching my stuff, so I appreciate that. Okay, I remember an incident and which that I have diabetes for several years. Okay, probably a misquote from Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who is the second coming of Jesus. Also some weird things. Maybe I'll check out the references. I'll click them here. So you've got a reference. People can check them out themselves. Okay, so nice copy pasting from somewhere, because I do get all these references. When I check them up, you go, it's not quite what was said, or something like that, or out of context. When I
Second coming of Jesus prophet.
That's right. That's what basically. So Mirza Ghulam Ahmad is the second coming of Jesus, the metaphorical second coming of Jesus. Obviously, there's a different topic, so I'm not going into that. But you know, I don't mind her saying whatever she wants to say. I'm just saying if there's anything in particular I can say with reference to what this discussion is. Muhammad literally destroyed the harvest of sacred trees, probably in Medina. I don't know about that. So anyway, thanks, Alika. Let's get on with the rest of it. So how to stop worrying? Let's do that. That's the next topic. And yep. So why did I actually even? Let's just do a quick intro, but not too long. Why did I talk about this? And I was thinking of you because I don't think you worry too much, but I do think you, how do I put it? Like you say, oh, this is happening, and therefore we should. I think we were talking about worrying, isn't it, between me and you? And I was saying, like, I'm chilled because I think God is the power, the master of the universe, and all I have to do is play my part. I don't have to worry about all the intrigues or the plans of these evil people, you know, around the world, because God's the greater planner, the master planner, as you say. And you say, you know, in the Quran it says the same sort of idea. You know, they plan, but God plans also. You know, so that's why that kind of brought that on. And I do think a lot of religious people, I hear them sort of semi panicking, but probably not panicking too much, but they're always like going after one conspiracy theory or another. It might be true, it might not be, but it doesn't mean you can educate yourself, but don't feel like you're under. This is the thing. I never feel I'm under anybody's power. There's God's only God has the power, and God allows certain things to happen, and God allows them so we learn from those things. So we learn from mistakes. Like if we are corrupt people gain power, and our job is to behave correctly to fix the mistakes that we've kind of allowed to happen. That's my sort of intro. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think I agree. When it comes to worrying, I think that we need some worry. That's how our body works. We need to worry because there are some things we should be worried about. And one thing I disagree with is, and I think a lot of Islamism is that what is written is going to happen. It's all in God's hands. We've talked about this before. I disagree. I think God is the master strategist, and He's constantly fighting a war, which He's winning because the number of Christian and Muslims continues to rise, which is a win. We have more Christians and Muslims alive today than we've ever had. So that's by that metric, God is winning the fight. As hard as the atheists try, our numbers are increasing, right? And the Antichrist.
Great.
But I think the issue is worrying about things we can't control. So I was worried about when the hell I'm going to get out. It's stressing me out. That's why I've been comforting. But that isn't something I can control because that's in the doctor's hands. So I shouldn't have worried about that. What I should have been worrying about, which I wasn't, was the amount of body weight I was gaining. And I should have controlled that. And that is my fault. That's my weakness. But yeah, like I said, I think we should worry about what we can control, and what we can't, just ignore it. Let God deal with that stuff. You know? And that's
Yeah.
another thing. Like I kind of regret, and maybe I'll go back and delete them, but I can't be bothered anyway. But a lot of my
We all make mistakes, whatever.
yeah, a lot of my videos where I was attacking the UK government and America, and that's why counterterrorism police have come and given me a visit.
Yeah. And I saw the video. I mean, did I see some of the videos? But you don't say anything particularly, but like
it wasn't too extreme, but
yeah.
there was no point because deep down, all British people know that their governments are dirty. Everyone knows it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most governments are basically, but yeah. Okay, so that's the intro done. Let's I didn't quote from the Holy Quran last time because the 5 pillars are all over the place in the Quran, but this is the thing I use to help me not worry. And it needs to, so there's a quote which is, but for him who fears to stand before his Lord, there are 2 gardens. So what do the gardens mean? Basically means paradise. So this is the paraphrased version. Worry mostly so that's not actually in the paraphrase version, is it? But anyway, the 2 gardens basically means happiness in this life and the next. Okay, that's the metaphor for in the Quran. But then this is me explaining it in short. Okay, so when we worry, mostly we fear other people's opinions. But if you focus on the truly powerful, that is God, and that that you're going to meet God, okay, then everything else becomes irrelevant. They become puny and weak in your sight when you truly believe God is all powerful. Okay, and also there's something very powerful about the idea of standing in front of God, because we can lie to each other, pretend to be, all perfect and whatever. But in front of God, there's no hiding. There's no lies. God knows what's in your mind, what you did, everything that happened. Right. And so that constant fear of God makes me fearless of other people, because everybody else's opinion doesn't matter. Right. And so you might say, no, actually, I do fear, I fear justifiable things. But if we go into them, they are based on, like, for example, you might say, okay, I wasted time in the hospital or something, right? And then for some people might have a lot of anxiety because they are desperately trying to climb the career ladder, for example, and it's a normal human thing, and why do they want that? Is because they want to make more money, and their excuse might be to serve the needs of their family, right? But actually very poor people do very well. They actually do much better than a lot of rich people, because I'm not anti-money, but that's not the thing that defines if you're going to be happy or not. Like, you will be fine. It might sound really harsh and maybe hard to understand, but you'll be fine if you're poor, as long as you're alive, and we're all going to be dead soon anyway, right? 80 years, 40 years, time flies, right? So having that is really powerful. I think it's really powerful in a modern age when materialism makes us so depressed and want to kill ourselves. This can, like, that reality check that nothing matters except for God, is a huge weight off shoulders. What do you think about that?
Yeah, look, I've had what I call divine inspiration. The doctors will call it a manic episode. But what I will say with 100% confidence is I found God. I found out that Jesus was a prophet all in that instant. It just came to me. It's like a revelation, inspiration on how life works.
Yeah.
And in those moments when I'm really connected to God, or manic, as a doctor would call it.
I call it connected to God. I call it revelation.
Yeah.
I think God is
I'm
always guiding all his children.
happy. I am so happy. The whole world, I'm connected to everything. And I read an article, and it's interesting because this girl was talking about her first bipolar episode when she became manic. She's like, she was so happy and she wasn't sleeping. And she would like run into restaurants and buy everyone a meal. And she's doing all this crazy stuff, right? And she thought she wasn't in real life. She genuinely thought she was dreaming. That is the power of when you connect to God. You don't even think it's real because it's like you're in this spiritual realm where you love everyone and everything is love and everything is happiness. And you don't think about, oh, how much is this bill going to cost me? And imagine a world like that where you could just walk around, buy people stuff, hug everyone you see, smile at everyone. It's a utopia. It's a heaven.
Yeah, that sounds like a TED talk where there was a neurosurgeon who had basically the left side of her brain, I think, stopped working. I can't remember which. I think the left side of the brain, I think, is the bit that I might be getting the wrong way around, but you get the idea. It's the one that plans. This is what I've got to do, whatever. And the right side of the brain is our connected side, right? And she lost the left-hand side, and all she was a sense of euphoria and connected to everything. And she's like, oh my God, it's wonderful. Like, that's her brain. And then the left side of her brain that was partly still functioning was like, hang on a minute, you gotta sort, you're gonna be dead in a minute. You know, like, you know what I mean? But that connectedness is actually really important. It's actually, there's so many things about psychology. It's called being, there's a word for it, like being totally connected is when your brain's functioning really well.
Yeah.
It's called being, there's a word for it. Never mind. There's all sorts of cool psychology things about this, but yeah, I'm glad you pointed out this thing about connecting with God. And this is also in the Quran. I talked to you about this probably before, hearts can find comfort in the remembrance of God. Like, that's that one thing. If you can do that, you don't need all the other stuff. All the other stuff is bonus, It's not that I stopped working or something, but when you connect to God and God wants you to be good to humanity, then you do things for that reason, not because you're constantly panicking and chasing stuff to feel good enough to be acceptable to other human beings. And you can never be totally acceptable to human beings because you can't control what other people think,
Agreed.
Yeah, so I'm going to break that down very quickly, this whole idea. So fear of God produces healthy long-term choices, not destructive, egotistical ones. So we might think we're logical, but actually most of us do really dumb things most of the time, okay? And because we do it out of fear of other people's opinions, so we just buy expensive stuff. Like, we're constantly buying stuff we don't need. And we make our lives, so we're working really hard at jobs we hate, okay, to buy stuff we don't need, to impress people we don't care about, right? But you should care about people, but you shouldn't need to impress people, right?
Yeah.
And then we're also, there's so many knock-on effects. Again, when I talk too much, and we've already gone over an hour, so I don't know how this is going to work out. But anyway, because there's another topic after this. So anyway, yeah, so that's what I'll say about that for now. We make dumb decisions, but if we think long term about God, we make much better decisions. I'm like, we're actually in control of our logical side rather than our emotional side, which is fear of other people's opinions. So that's what I'll say about that. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, one thing I would say, seeing as we're on the topic of worry, a lot of time in your videos, you start talking out your worries, like, oh, we've talked too long about this, oh,
No,
let
I
it
feel
go,
bad.
let it go.
I probably should let it go, but I've got this idea that people don't want to hear me talk too much or something. They're like, say it quickly,
No,
get on with
it's
it.
up to them, you know. I wouldn't put that pressure on yourself.
All right, thank you. I'll bear that. I have noticed actually this week and in previous weeks, sometimes I think a video is going to be totally a flop. I talked about dogs this week, like how people are, making friends with dogs instead of humans. And it's a big trend, especially in the West. And I thought nobody's going to understand this. And I got like the best reviews.
It's a big, you know, I wish I was there to comment. You know, during my mania stage, I went
Yeah.
to the park one day just to like run around. And it
Yeah.
was in the middle of the day, like 1 p.m. And I kid you not, Khalid, I looked like this, I looked like that, and I saw dozens of people
Yeah.
with dogs. And I was looking, I was like, okay, where is the woman with the two kids or the father with his kids? There was none, but there was dozens of people with dogs. I'm like, what is this country become? It's become the country of dogs and pets
It
instead of
is.
humans.
It's very accurate because people don't like children anymore. They think they're too expensive, too much trouble. Oh, it's
That's
really sad.
it's sad, very sad.
Yeah. So next point, fear of God focuses life on something meaningful, which strengthens your identity, which gives you happiness. So most people are really fragile in their happiness, right? So this is one of the reasons why people are trying to form sort of identities like, oh, maybe I'm not really a man, I'm a woman. And I really feel sorry for them. People are, and they even use it as a sort of way of standing for something, like I stand for LGBT, I stand for whatever. People need to stand for something, right? To feel good about themselves. Okay. And so fear of God is you focus on God above everything else. And psychologists like Viktor Frankl say your happiness depends on living a meaningful life. And there's something the Western Hollywood propaganda have tried to tell you, that you can live randomly and be stupid. You know what I mean? Like, what was it? Something is bliss, ignorance is bliss. Like there's all these like Friends. The Friends, what's it called? Comedy. It was all about being stupid, right?
I agree with you. I think there's an agenda in the West by the elites to slowly get rid of people being able to have assets and being in control, finding a pill for everything that's unnecessary. Oh, you don't want to be a man? Here's a pill to make you a woman. Oh, oh, you're feeling depressed. Here's a pill to make you happy. When almost 99% of the problems can be solved by loving God and accepting your reality. If you're born with a bad back, that shouldn't define you. Just accept that reality. Hopefully, the men and women of God will one day find a cure if you're lucky.
Yeah.
But accept that reality and move forward. But we have these moving goalposts now, and the scary thing is, once they push this transgender, the next thing they're going to say is, and already started trying to teach kids when they're young sexual stuff. That's what they'll go for next. And this is only going to increase worry and depression and everything else, because deep down, we are natural beings. And when you go against nature, when you start or start having sex with things you're not meant to, you go against nature, you destroy yourself, you get depressed. And it's an evil cycle.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, just today I was watching a video about Monty Python or something. I don't know if you've heard about this clip where the video is supposed to be completely ridiculous. Basically, a man talking about how he wants to have a baby, and he was told he can't have a baby, right? And now they're having to delete that clip because it's anti-transgender. Like something like 30 years ago was considered so ridiculous that it's not even politically incorrect, but now it's become politically incorrect because we've gone down such a dark place where anything is possible to say, and then we shouldn't be surprised if anything worse happens. We're having sex with rabbits or something. You know what I mean? Because they'll say, why not? So that's become a religion. That has really become a religion because people get really upset, and there's a whole argument to prove it. And anybody who's seen transgender debates, they've seen it's very much like a religion. They can't even hear the argument against you. In Speaker's Corner, when they come, they're the only people who don't want to talk. It's like really weird. And they're the only people who don't let anybody else talk as well. That's their actions. They just make noise. So I'm not going to go on about them too much. But all I'm trying to say really is that there's a sense of identity loss and a sense of direction loss. And when you fear God, everything is just lines up. That's what I'll say. Everything lines up. And it's based on psychology. Viktor Frankl calls God the super meaning. Like you can't have a meaning without that. Everything else falls apart without that. What are you going to say?
No, yeah, I agree with you.
Cool. So now off to inflation, trying to race through all this stuff. Okay, is the West inflation avoidable? I'll just quote the beginning of a verse from the Holy Quran. Those who devour interest do not rise except as rises one whom Satan has smitten with insanity. There's a bit more about why in that same verse about why inflation is not trade and things like that, right? Just some important things, but technical things, but I'm not going to focus on those things. Okay, so basically inflation is not necessary. Inflation is caused by interest. So yeah, so I put some things there really quickly, but I'm not sure if I'll go exactly by them. So inflation encourages materialism, but that's not really. I was actually thinking of all the problems related to inflation, but I forgot the focus was inflation. So I'll focus on that, and I'll probably ignore my own graphics I put there, because I always do this stuff in a rush. So why is inflation caused by interest? So just today, I was at a sort of a funeral sort of thing, not a funeral exactly. Like you sit down with a bunch of people. That's what Muslims do, and they talk about the guy who died or how wonderful he was, which is a really nice thing to do. And they were talking about when he came to the country, the house was £2,000. Right? Okay. And now the same house is probably worth about $1 million, without exaggeration, right? Okay. Or maybe not. I know the house, I'm thinking maybe 700,000, but it's a lot more, right? From 2,000 to 700,000, that's a massive difference. Okay. So why does this happen? When you have the ability to spend more than you have, then the products that you're buying, they will rise in price because people can afford it. It's basically supply demand sort of thing. Okay, so you're exaggerating supply demand with money you don't even have. So it's a really nasty cycle of making things more expensive. Of course, actually feeding into some of the things I've written there, pays for wars. So if you pay, so wars are incredibly expensive, and they actually can only function if you pay with interest, because nobody can afford wars. Okay, all the Western countries, by the way, in massive debt, like minus $1 trillion or something, right? Probably even more than that. Do you know how much the debt every Western country has? Like,
I know America is in like the 4 trillion or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous, right? So none of these countries can afford wars. Okay, each war costs billions a day, right? But anyway, so you're spending money you don't have, and interest makes it possible to do stupid things like that. It's like ridiculous. Like, how do you spend money you don't have, mate? Interest. Go on.
I'd argue, and most economics people would agree with me, interest is disinflationary. Interest reduces the inflation, it doesn't increase it. What's increasing inflation is money printing and fractional reserve banking.
Okay, so fractional reserve banking, can you break that down for me? Isn't that basically borrowing money money that doesn't exist?
Yeah, so basically, let's say
how does that work? Would it work without interest?
Yeah, let's say I put £1,000 in a bank. They can loan out from that £1,000. They can give out like 9 grand
Yeah.
in made up.
I would argue that it's not possible without interest because they're waiting for more and more money to come back because they've done something clearly very dodgy, which is give money they don't have, and they're waiting for more money to come back to give
Yeah,
to
interest is their
repay the.
profit. It's their profit. It's how they make their money.
Yeah, so this is what the Quran talks about. That is not. It's not really profit. It's something else. Something really far more ugly.
I agree. I don't think we should have banks.
Yeah.
I don't think we should have interest. The government should borrow people the money, a fair amount, and that's it, really.
Well, what Islam says, just for people who don't know, because they might say, how can you just get rid of interest? You need an alternative. And it's probably worth explaining very quickly, is that there should be banks, even an individual can be a bank, right? Somebody, so in Islamic times, there are people who made loads of money and people would trust them with their money. And they'll say, you invest the money on our behalf. And if you lose and we lose, that's fine. Okay. Basically, it's proper investment. What banks do, they don't really invest. What they do is they have a win-win situation only for them, which is they will lend you money, and if they lent you really badly, which happened, before the financial crisis of 2008, was it? They lent loads of money to people who couldn't afford to pay back, right? And it doesn't matter because they got all the properties for free, basically. Right? So it's basically a massive scam, is the short version, without me going into it too much. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I think inflation is dangerous. It makes people it makes money unpayable because let's say we have £1,000 in circulation and then we put 10% interest on that, so there's 1,100. There's only £1,000, so where's someone going to get the extra 100? That's when you have to print more money, and then now there's more money in the system. More money in the system causes inflation. It's bad. What we need to have is a central bank in each country that lends people in a logical manner. Let's say I've got a 60K salary. The bank says to me, we'll give you 600 grand, 10 times your salary, to go and purchase a house, and then you pay it back to us without interest over a certain period of time. And it should just be fair to everyone based on their current salary or employment without any favoritism. Because now the bank, they look after their people. Rich people can get away with more bespoke products than a normal individual. It's all based on credit score and all this stuff. It shouldn't be like that.
Yeah, and the thing you said about, standard economic ideas, like interest is used to deflate, it doesn't work. Yeah, because people, if you don't have money, you're not going to save. The idea is you have more interest and people put money in the bank. It just never worked. Like these things have never worked in the past. It's just theories that I would say are groundless, but it's a whole long debate.
Like, okay, let's say inflation was running at 5%. Okay. So I want to buy this I want to renew this tractor for my company. And inflation is 5%, but a bank will give me 6% interest. The logical thing to do would be wait 1 year if you don't have to make the move automatically, and then buy the truck, and you get that 1% interest for free. And that slows down your purchasing, which slows down demand. You get what I'm saying? But if inflation was running at 20% and the interest is only 5%, then it would be stupid to stop. That's why they always say that.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
So,
But yeah, I think inflation, interest causes inflation, like the reason I gave, and probably so many others. But I think I put some things in our order, but I was going to agree about the printing money. But that was kind of my initial kind of thing. We borrow money that we don't have, and then we have to print money to pay for things we don't have, and then money becomes valueless, like what we're experiencing right now. So I think I've gone through this in some sort of random order, but whatever. Partly because I'm trying to speed through things, like you're telling me not to. But anyway, so yeah, what was it? Make spending beyond your means possible. It's ridiculous. How can you spend money you don't have? Which yeah, I've talked about that already. I think it's really nice to see like, you know, some you might say this is just theoretical, and there's a really nice thing it's worth researching. It's called the miracle worker, and I think basically what happened was it's a combination of two things that I'm talking about: inflation and sort of like the zakat system, which is basically taxing unused wealth.
Yeah.
And what happened during this, was it called the Great Depression? Basically, they've got from having no money, they basically created their own currency,
Yeah.
stamp system. So there are X fixed amount of money in the system in this town, and because there was there was basically, in short, they were taxed for keeping money they didn't use. So everybody kept on using their money, and it created high money velocity. It's probably worth searching what that means. Basically, in short, what it means, and I think there's a beautiful way of explaining it, like in biology. If you got good blood circulation, that's healthy. If you got trapped blood, like a bruise or something like that, right, that's a bad thing. So getting money on interest is like, it it encourages people to keep money in one place rather than circulate it.
Yeah.
Okay, the zakat system, if implemented, is a tax on people keeping money and not spending it. And so what happened in this Austrian town in, you know, Europe, um, was that people kept on using that money. So every pound had so much effect. So you spend a pound on somebody, and that person spends that pound that they earn on something else. That pound goes through the system really fast, and there's a massive benefit. Like each pound has a massive benefit, and so society becomes really rich with a fixed amount of money. So it sounds really weird, but economics kind of sound a bit weird. But if anybody's heard about money velocity, it makes some sort of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on. What were you going to say?
I've heard about velocity of money. It's how quickly people spend money when they get it, and
Yeah.
it can cause a lot of inflation if it gets really fast.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. I don't know about that. Basically, it's making use of good. I think I don't know about that, but it does make sense that if you've got money going round, being effective rather than being idle, which is what high interest rates
It's good for
encourage
economic
rich people to
development.
do.
Yeah. It's good
Yeah,
because it's about,
it
that's
keeps.
why they push us to be consumers, but it's about positive consumerism. You
Yeah,
know, buying things you
yeah.
actually need that better you, that make you more productive and a more productive individual in society. I think, the most damaging money, especially the money we give to the poor people in council estates now, the most damaging thing is they pour their money into cigarettes and alcohol, which is damaging their body. If they pour their alcohol into, educating themselves and looking after their health and looking after their kids, we'd live in a better society.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. There's very poor people who spend all their money on branded goods. And I'm not saying it in a way to belittle them. I think they probably lack hope for the future or something. That's what people do. I think there was a thing I was studying about fashion at one point. People, and I think you probably can probably see this and agree with this. People who spend a lot of money on fashion are basically trying to demonstrate they are somebody who they're not willing to become, if that makes any sense. And so that's a sad thing, because that's actually a sign of hopelessness and depression, really. That you don't have much hope for the future. That's a form of depression. So yeah, that's sad in itself. And then what I was going to say is uh interest, or the lack of interest and paying zakat, fixes the root of the problem, which is greed. So there was this, I do feel like jumping backwards a little bit to the beginning, this beautiful verse of the Holy Quran, which basically summarizes some of the things that really confused me. It's like, how are these really rich people like Bill Gates and whatever, why and somebody is pulling the strings, who making us fight this Ukraine war, which might start potentially a nuclear war. how can they do that, putting the whole world under threat, including their own livelihood and everything?
Yeah.
It's basically an ego at high level that we all experience ourselves. Like, we have an ego which makes us do stupid things. It's like interest makes you so crazy that you want to do more and more. It encourages materialism, if it's a good thing, and you do mind-bogglingly stupid things, even though you're supposedly smart, like Bill Gates or whatever, right? Yeah, so that's just how I think. Inflation is not necessary, it's manufactured. You borrow money. So I will try to wind up with this one idea, which hopefully makes it clear that inflation is caused by interest. It's like this: you borrow money and you have to pay more money back. How are you going to pay more money back? You have to keep creating more and more and more. Okay, so you're having to. So what governments nowadays do is they have this thing called GDP, gross domestic product. No,
Yeah.
growth. There's something about growth. You have to have growth. What was that thing?
I don't know.
Because you're an accountant, maybe you know something about this.
No, gross domestic product is the amount
That's not
of
the.
in the economy.
Yeah. Oh, gross domestic product has to grow. I think you have to have growth in the economy,
Yeah,
and the reason why you have to have growth in the economy is to keep up with your interest payments.
correct, yes, yes. You know, I see in your way it's true because the government is creating more money with interest. The only way it can be paid back is for us to print more money because of the interest. If we didn't have interest, the government wouldn't have to keep printing new money to fulfill that gap in the hole. So when you look at it from that perspective, you are right that interest does cause inflation, and that devalues all the work of everyone, all the workers who are meant to be served by the bank, and it only just makes the rich richer.
That's it. Cool. We whizzed through a ton of stuff. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for your time as well. It's been great.
Yeah.
Hopefully people learn a thing or two.
Yeah, that's the aim, you know. We don't just talk for the sake of it. We really want one or two people to learn, because it's it's a few that actually lead the many. That's just how the world works. So yeah, I'll just see if there's any other comments beyond. Nope, no more comments from Malika. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Good news to you.
Hopefully next time we do it face to face.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. You're a good man. You're a good man.
Take care, bro.
Take care. Bye. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you.